What if I told you that the internet you use every day is just the tip of the iceberg? Beneath it lies a hidden world, a vast and secretive network of information, encrypted channels, and digital communities that most people will never see. This is the part of the internet that governments don't want you to access. It's a space where information flows outside mainstream control, where anonymity is both a necessity and a risk, and where entire networks operate beyond the watchful eyes of surveillance agencies. Most people think of the internet as the place where they check social media, stream videos, shop online, or search for information. But what if I told you that everything you see, everything indexed by Google, controlled by corporations, and regulated by governments, is only a tiny fraction of what actually exists? The surface web represents just about 5% of the entire internet. The rest is hidden in layers of encrypted networks, dark marketplaces, private communication hubs, and secret databases that remain inaccessible to the average user. This hidden internet, often mistaken as just the dark web, is much more than a collection of illegal marketplaces and hacker forums. It includes government-controlled intranets, intelligence agency databases, whistleblower platforms, classified military networks, and encrypted communication services used by journalists, dissidents, and underground organizations. Some of these networks exist to evade censorship, while others serve as the backbone for some of the most classified operations in the world. But why is so much of the internet hidden? Who controls access to these networks, and why do governments go to such extreme lengths to regulate, monitor, or even shut down access to certain parts of the web? The answers lie in a complex web of power, security, and secrecy. In some cases, authorities argue that hidden networks enable cybercrime, fraud, or illicit activities. In others, governments seek to protect their own secrets, ensuring that military and intelligence operations remain invisible to the public. But the bigger question is, what are they really hiding? Over the next few sections, we'll uncover the hidden layers of the internet, diving deep into how governments control online information, how classified digital infrastructures work, and how underground networks operate outside mainstream control. We'll explore the dark web, private communication channels, encrypted databases, and alternative internets that have emerged as a response to increasing digital surveillance. We'll also reveal the controversial tactics used by intelligence agencies to track individuals in these hidden spaces, as well as the growing war between censorship and digital freedom. By the end of this video, you'll understand just how much of the internet is hidden from public view and why governments are so determined to keep it that way. But first, let's start by breaking down the internet as we know it, the version that's been carefully curated for mass consumption, versus the internet that they don't want you to see. The internet you know versus the internet you don't. Most people think of the internet as a vast, limitless space where information is freely accessible. Every day, billions of searches are made on Google, videos are streamed on YouTube, and conversations unfold across social media platforms. But this familiar version of the internet is just the surface, literally. The part of the internet you know, the one available through standard search engines and indexed websites, makes up only a small fraction of what actually exists. Beneath it lies a much deeper, more complex digital world that most people will never access. The surface web, the illusion of an open internet. The websites you visit every day, Google, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and news sites, are all part of what's known as the surface web. This is the portion of the internet that search engines can easily crawl and index. It includes blogs, e-commerce sites, social media platforms, and other publicly available content that doesn't require special permissions or encryption to access. Despite the illusion of an open internet, the surface web accounts for less than 5% of the total internet. That means when you type a search into Google, you are only skimming the top layer of an unimaginably massive network. Governments and corporations encourage people to believe that the internet is free and open, but in reality, what we see is a carefully curated and controlled version of online space. Search engines determine which results appear at the top, social media companies decide which content gets amplified, and entire industries exist to ensure that certain information is easy to find while other information is buried, shadow banned, or outright censored. If the surface web is all you ever access, you're only seeing what governments, corporations, and search engine algorithms want you to see. The deep web, the internet hidden from search engines. Beyond the surface web lies the deep web, a much larger portion of the internet that isn't indexed by search engines. Unlike the surface web, the deep web isn't inherently mysterious or illegal. It simply consists of content that is restricted by permissions, logins, and security measures. Every time you check your email, access an online banking portal, log into a private company database, or browse an academic journal that requires a subscription, you are accessing the deep web. Corporate intranets, research databases, government archives, private forums, and medical records all exist within this hidden layer of the internet. While the deep web itself isn't necessarily secretive, it does contain vast amounts of information that is intentionally kept out of public search results. Governments, universities, financial institutions, and corporations store sensitive data within this layer, ensuring that only authorized users can access specific content. However, it's what exists beyond the deep web that truly begins to challenge the idea of an open and free internet. The dark web, a hidden world of encrypted network. Deeper still lies the dark web, a portion of the internet that requires specialized software to access. Unlike the deep web, which consists of protected but legal content, the dark web is often associated with secrecy, anonymity, and controversial activities. Accessing the dark web requires specialized tools like Tor, the Onion Router, or I2P, Invisible Internet Project, which are designed to mask user identities and encrypt online traffic. These networks provide access to hidden services, websites that don't use standard domain names and can't be reached through regular browsers. While the dark web has gained notoriety for hosting black markets, illicit goods, and cyber-criminal activity, it also serves a vital role in privacy and free speech movements. Journalists, whistleblowers, activists, and individuals in heavily censored countries use encrypted dark web services to communicate securely, avoid surveillance, and access information that might otherwise be restricted by authoritarian governments. Dark web marketplaces, hacking forums, and underground communities do exist, but the mainstream portrayal of the dark web as a purely criminal space is misleading. Many users rely on these networks to escape government monitoring and preserve their digital privacy. In fact, some of the same encryption technologies used on the dark web are also used by journalists reporting in dangerous territories, as well as by law enforcement agencies themselves. Beyond the dark web, the hidden networks governments control even deeper than the dark web are classified digital infrastructures that remain entirely off-limits to the public. These networks are not simply unindexed or encrypted, they are actively protected, monitored, and controlled by governments, intelligence agencies, and military organizations. One such example is government-controlled intranets, closed digital ecosystems used by intelligence agencies, military personnel, and high-ranking officials. Unlike the dark web, which anyone with the right tools can access, these networks are entirely cut off from the public internet and require highly secure authentication to enter. The United States government, for example, operates several classified networks, including JWICS, Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communications System, which handles top-secret military intelligence. Similarly, Russia's SORM, System for Operative Investigative Activities, is used for state-controlled surveillance, while China's internal government web remains separate from the public-facing internet. Beyond these government networks, there are elite underground forums, hacker communities, and closed research networks that share information outside of mainstream internet channels. Some of these are accessible only to a select few: financial elites, intelligence operatives, and members of high-level institutions, who operate behind layers of encryption and invitation-only access. Governments don't want the public to know about these networks because they reveal the full extent of surveillance, classified operations, and digital control mechanisms. While the dark web is often blamed for illicit activity, the truly secretive parts of the internet are controlled not by criminals, but by the very institutions that claim to be protecting national security. The reality is that there isn't just one hidden internet, there are multiple layers, each with different levels of secrecy and access control. Some are used for privacy, some for illegal activity, and others for state operations that the general public is never meant to see. If this much of the internet is hidden, how do governments actually control what the public can access? And more importantly, how far do they go to suppress, manipulate, or eliminate certain online information? In the next section, we'll break down the extreme measures governments take to regulate internet access, monitor online activity, and control digital information flow worldwide. How governments control internet access. The internet was once imagined as a decentralized, open platform where information could flow freely, empowering people with unrestricted access to knowledge. But in reality, governments across the world have developed powerful tools to control, restrict, and monitor internet usage. While some countries operate under the illusion of a free internet, others openly enforce strict regulations, limiting what citizens can see, say, and do online. These controls are implemented under the guise of national security, protection from misinformation, or cybercrime prevention, but they also serve a deeper purpose: safeguarding state power and suppressing dissent. Censorship and firewalls, the Great Wall of Digital Control. One of the most extreme examples of government-controlled internet is China's Great Firewall, a vast and sophisticated censorship system designed to block access to foreign websites and regulate domestic online activity. Platforms like Google, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are completely banned, replaced by Chinese alternatives such as Baidu, WeChat, and Youku, which are tightly monitored by the state. The government employs deep packet inspection technology, artificial intelligence, and an army of human sensors to ensure that politically sensitive content never reaches the public. Internet censorship in China is not just about blocking Western websites, it's about controlling the flow of information, shaping narratives, and eliminating dissent. Citizens who attempt to access restricted content using VPNs or encrypted services risk severe consequences, including fines, arrests, or permanent internet blacklisting. The system is so advanced that it can detect and disrupt VPN traffic in real time, making circumvention increasingly difficult. North Korea takes censorship to an even greater extreme with Kwangmyong, its isolated, state-controlled intranet. Unlike China, which still allows limited global internet access under strict supervision, North Korea has effectively created a private, government-run internet that exists entirely within its borders. There is no access to the World Wide Web, only pre-approved content selected by the regime. The purpose of Kwangmyong is clear: to create a completely insulated digital environment where citizens are only exposed to state-approved information. These examples illustrate how firewalls and censorship mechanisms are not just about restricting certain websites, they are about controlling reality itself. When a government dictates what information people can access, it controls their perception of the world. Surveillance programs, the eyes watching everything. Beyond censorship, governments also use mass surveillance programs to track online activity. Even in countries that claim to uphold digital freedoms, intelligence agencies operate covert programs that monitor internet traffic, collect private data, and analyze communications in the name of national security. The United States, through the PRISM program, collects vast amounts of data from tech giants like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Apple. This program, first exposed by whistleblower Edward Snowden in 2013, revealed that the U.S. National Security Agency, NSA, has direct access to private emails, video calls, chat messages, and search histories of millions of people worldwide. Even individuals who are not suspected of any crimes are caught in this digital dragnet. Another surveillance tool, X-Keyscore, allows intelligence agencies to collect and analyze every action a person takes online in real time. It tracks websites visited, private messages, and even keystrokes, providing a frightening level of insight into individuals' personal lives. Governments defend these programs by claiming they help prevent terrorism and cybercrime, but in reality, they create an unprecedented system of digital surveillance that can be abused for political control. The Five Eyes Alliance, a secret intelligence sharing network between the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, extends this surveillance on a global scale. These governments exchange intelligence data, allowing them to bypass national privacy laws and spy on each other's citizens without legal restrictions. This means that even in countries where mass surveillance is technically illegal, intelligence agencies can still access user data through their foreign allies. The extent of these surveillance programs raises a critical question. If governments are truly committed to protecting individual freedoms, why are they so invested in monitoring every aspect of people's online lives? Why governments restrict access to the internet? Censorship and surveillance exist for one simple reason: control. Governments justify these restrictions by citing concerns about national security, misinformation, cyber threats, and social stability, but the real motivation often extends far beyond these reasons. One major concern for governments is the fear of leaks. The internet has given whistleblowers an unprecedented platform to expose corruption, human rights violations, and classified government programs. WikiLeaks, the Panama Papers, and the Snowden leaks demonstrated how powerful institutions manipulate information to serve their own interests. By controlling online spaces, governments limit the ability of journalists, activists, and truth seekers to expose these secrets. Another reason for restricting internet access is political power. Many authoritarian regimes use internet censorship as a tool to suppress opposition movements, prevent protests, and maintain control over public discourse. In Iran, for example, the government routinely shuts down the internet during times of political unrest, preventing citizens from organizing demonstrations or sharing information with the outside world. Even in democratic countries, there is a growing trend of corporate government alliances shaping what information is visible online. Social media platforms are pressured to remove content deemed politically sensitive, and algorithms are designed to amplify certain narratives while suppressing others. This silent form of censorship, often disguised as content moderation, influences public opinion, election outcomes, and global narratives. National security is often cited as the ultimate justification for internet restrictions, but this excuse is conveniently broad and often exploited. Governments argue that restricting certain websites, monitoring user activity, or filtering search results is necessary to combat terrorism, cyber warfare, and foreign interference. However, these measures frequently go beyond security concerns and target activists, independent journalists, and individuals critical of state policies. Laws and regulations. The global war on digital freedom. Different countries have different approaches to internet control, but a disturbing trend has emerged: a worldwide crackdown on digital freedoms. In recent years, many nations have passed laws that give governments greater authority to regulate online content, criminalize dissent, and increase surveillance powers. In Russia, laws require internet service providers to store all user data for at least 6 months and grant government agencies unrestricted access. The country has also implemented a sovereign internet system, allowing authorities to disconnect Russia from the global web at any time. In Turkey, authorities regularly block access to websites critical of the government, including Wikipedia and opposition news platforms. Journalists who publish content that contradicts the official state narrative face imprisonment, and social media users have been arrested for spreading misinformation. In Iran, access to international news sites, social media, and encrypted messaging apps is severely restricted. The government uses deep packet inspection to track users attempting to bypass restrictions, and violators risk imprisonment or worse. Even in Western countries, digital censorship is on the rise. The European Union has introduced policies aimed at regulating fake news and extremist content, but critics argue that these laws create a dangerous precedent for online speech suppression. What's becoming clear is that governments, regardless of ideology, see the internet as a battleground for control. Those in power understand that the ability to control access to information is the ability to control society itself. The internet was supposed to be a tool for freedom, but as governments tighten their grip, new underground networks are emerging to counteract censorship and surveillance. In the next section, we'll explore what lies beyond the dark web, hidden layers of the internet that even governments struggle to control. What is beyond the dark web? The hidden layers of the internet. Most people believe that the dark web is the deepest, most secretive part of the internet, a place where illegal transactions, anonymous forums, and underground operations exist beyond mainstream access. But what if there was something even further beyond that? What if the dark web was merely an introduction to an even more concealed world of encrypted networks, intelligence hubs, and government-controlled cyberspaces? The truth is, there are hidden layers of the internet that even the most advanced dark web users will never access. Some of these networks are designed for privacy and anonymity, while others are reserved for governments, intelligence agencies, and corporate elites. Beyond the dark web exists an entirely different dimension of cyberspace, one that governments closely monitor, defend, and restrict from public knowledge. Tor, I2P, and Freenet, the tools of the hidden internet. The dark web is most commonly accessed using Tor, the onion router, a network that routes internet traffic through multiple layers of encryption, making it nearly impossible to trace the original source. Originally developed by the US Navy, Tor has become a critical tool for journalists, whistleblowers, activists, and anyone trying to escape government surveillance. While the dark web hosts notorious marketplaces and hacker forums, it also provides a safe space for those living under oppressive regimes, offering secure communication channels free from censorship. Another layer of anonymity exists in I2P, Invisible Internet Project, a decentralized network designed for fully anonymous peer-to-peer communication. Unlike Tor, which is optimized for browsing, I2P is primarily used for encrypted messaging, hosting hidden websites, and sharing files beyond the reach of conventional tracking. It operates within its own darknet, a self-contained space where even metadata is heavily obscured, making it far more difficult for surveillance agencies to monitor users. Freenet takes anonymity even further by completely decentralizing web storage and content distribution. It doesn't rely on a single server but instead spreads encrypted data across a peer-to-peer network, ensuring that no single entity controls access to information. This makes Freenet a powerful tool for whistleblowers, activists, and anyone seeking to publish censored information without fear of being traced back to the source. These networks serve as a digital battleground between privacy advocates and government agencies, with each side developing increasingly sophisticated techniques to either enhance anonymity or break through encryption barriers. The deeper one goes, the clearer it becomes that governments are not just trying to control the surface web, they are actively monitoring and infiltrating the underground internet as well. The closed networks of elites, the internet you'll never see beyond the networks available to privacy-conscious users, lie even more restricted digital spaces, ones that are completely inaccessible to the public. These elite networks are reserved for government agencies, corporate executives, military organizations, and intelligence operations, forming a hidden layer of the internet that few even know exists. Intelligence agencies, defense contractors, and financial institutions operate on private intranets that are completely isolated from the public internet. These networks are used for classified communications, encrypted financial transactions, and sensitive military operations, protected by air-gapped systems that prevent outside access entirely. Unlike the dark web, which still relies on public infrastructure, these closed networks exist within private, government-controlled ecosystems, making them completely impenetrable without direct internal access. Some corporations also maintain private internets for secure business operations, data storage, and research. Global banking systems, for example, process trillions of dollars through hidden financial networks, transferring assets across borders without any visibility on the standard internet. High-frequency trading firms utilize low-latency private fiber optic networks that allow them to execute financial transactions in milliseconds, faster than any publicly available internet connection. Even certain elite academic and research institutions operate within their own closed digital ecosystems, housing classified studies, advanced artificial intelligence research, and government-funded projects that never make it to the public sphere. While these networks exist for security purposes, they also represent a hidden world of knowledge and information that remains out of reach for ordinary citizens. Project Echelon and government spying, the invisible surveillance network. Governments don't just control internet access and censor information, they actively spy on encrypted networks, infiltrating underground digital spaces in an effort to monitor global activity. One of the most controversial and secretive surveillance operations in history is Project Echelon, a global intelligence network designed to intercept and analyze communications across the world. Originally developed during the Cold War, Echelon is a massive, classified surveillance program run by the Five Eyes Alliance, a coalition of the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. This system was built to monitor phone calls, emails, faxes, and internet communications, capturing vast amounts of data from millions of people worldwide. Although governments claim Echelon is used for counter-terrorism and national security, leaked reports suggest that it has been used to conduct industrial espionage, track political dissidents, and spy on allied governments. With advances in technology, Echelon has evolved into a global mass surveillance powerhouse, capable of collecting data from fiber optic cables, satellite transmissions, and even encrypted online communications. Intelligence agencies have infiltrated networks like Tor, I2P, and Freenet, developing de-anonymization tools that attempt to identify users operating within these hidden spaces. Whistleblower revelations have confirmed that no online space is truly safe from government surveillance. Intelligence agencies have deployed malware, built backdoors into encrypted systems, and compromised VPN services to track individuals who seek privacy on the internet. Governments claim these measures are necessary for national security, but the reality is far more complex. They are engaged in a digital arms race to dominate the hidden layers of the internet before anyone else does. Case study: Edward Snowden's leaks on NSA surveillance. Few individuals have had as much impact on exposing government surveillance as Edward Snowden, the former NSA contractor who leaked classified documents revealing the full extent of the US government's mass data collection programs. In 2013, Snowden disclosed the existence of PRISM, X-Keyscore, and other secret surveillance programs that proved that intelligence agencies were collecting emails, phone calls, and internet browsing histories from millions of people worldwide. These revelations confirmed what many had long suspected: the government was not just watching suspected criminals or terrorists, but monitoring ordinary citizens, foreign leaders, journalists, and private corporations. The leaked documents also revealed covert operations to weaken encryption standards, infiltrate private networks, and exploit security vulnerabilities in online platforms. Snowden's disclosures triggered global debates on privacy, government overreach, and digital rights, but they also exposed an unsettling truth. The very agencies that claim to protect democracy and freedom have built one of the most advanced surveillance infrastructures in history, capable of tracking and analyzing almost every aspect of digital life. Even today, Snowden remains in exile, proving that exposing the truth about government surveillance comes at an extraordinary personal cost. His case serves as a warning about the dangers of unchecked power in the digital age and raises an urgent question: if the government is capable of surveilling everything, who is watching the watchers? What lies beyond the dark web is more than just underground marketplaces or anonymous chat rooms. It is a vast, hidden infrastructure of covert networks, classified intelligence programs, and elite digital spaces that most of the world will never have access to. While the public is distracted by the internet they know, those in power continue to build, monitor, and manipulate the internet they don't. But the war for digital freedom is far from over. In the next section, we'll explore the secret underground networks that remain beyond government control, the decentralized alternatives to the modern internet, and how individuals are finding new ways to communicate without being watched. The secret underground networks you can't easily access. The internet most people interact with is just a small fraction of what truly exists. Beyond the layers of encrypted anonymity tools like Tor and I2P, there are even deeper networks that are virtually inaccessible to the public. These networks are not just hidden, they are actively protected, monitored, and restricted by the most powerful governments and intelligence agencies in the world. Some operate as closed government systems, others are elite intelligence networks, and a few remain as underground communities that exist solely to evade surveillance. Unlike the dark web, which still relies on public infrastructure, these networks exist completely separate from the everyday internet, making them virtually impenetrable without classified access. Closed government networks, the invisible systems of power, are one of the most tightly controlled hidden networks is the internal web infrastructure used by government agencies and intelligence organizations. These networks are built specifically to keep classified information out of the public internet, ensuring that sensitive military, law enforcement, and intelligence data remains inaccessible to anyone outside their tightly controlled ecosystems. The FBI's CIPAV, Computer and Internet Protocol Address Verifier, is a sophisticated tracking tool that has been used to secretly infiltrate private networks. Unlike traditional surveillance programs, CIPAV is designed to install covert spyware on targeted devices, giving the FBI real-time access to location data, browsing history, and encrypted communications. This network is not accessible by the public, and even information about its inner workings remains highly classified. In Russia, the SORM, System for Operative Investigative Activities, network is an extensive digital surveillance and control system used by the government to monitor and filter internet traffic nationwide. This system not only tracks web activity but also stores vast amounts of personal data, online transactions, and communication logs for indefinite periods. Unlike China's Great Firewall, which restricts foreign websites, SORM is designed to covertly monitor and intercept domestic and international communications, making it one of the most advanced state-sponsored surveillance tools in the world. China operates an internal government network entirely separate from the global internet, ensuring that its most sensitive data never crosses public online infrastructure. This internal network, sometimes referred to as China's military internet, is a closed system that is completely off-limits to civilians. Government officials, military commanders, and intelligence operatives use this system to share highly classified communications and research without the risk of leaks or cyber intrusions from foreign entities. Unlike the dark web, which anyone with technical skills can attempt to access, these government-controlled networks are completely isolated from public connectivity, making them impenetrable without internal authorization. Invisible intranets, the hidden data hubs of the elite. Beyond government networks, there are invisible intranets that house classified data for corporations, research institutions, and intelligence contractors. These intranets exist as completely closed digital environments, accessible only through pre-approved authentication systems and physical location access points. Some financial institutions operate their own private trading networks, where high-frequency traders execute transactions faster than public financial exchanges can register. These high-speed fiber optic networks bypass traditional internet infrastructure, allowing hedge funds and investment firms to move billions of dollars in fractions of a second. Because these networks operate independently, they are virtually invisible to regulators and everyday investors, giving select institutions an enormous advantage in financial markets. Elite academic institutions and research labs also maintain classified digital archives, containing everything from advanced artificial intelligence research to highly classified government-funded projects. These networks are not connected to the public internet, meaning that even if someone knew they existed, they would have no way of accessing them without physical security clearance and biometric verification. Military contractors and defense firms operate secure intelligence sharing networks that allow them to exchange classified information with governments worldwide. These networks function outside of mainstream online communications, preventing cyber espionage, leaks, or data breaches. Unlike the encrypted messaging systems used by journalists or activists on the dark web, these networks require direct, physical access to secure locations, making them among the most well-guarded digital spaces in the world. Secretive communities, the hidden world of hacker forums and spy networks. Beyond closed government networks and elite intranets, there are underground digital communities that exist outside mainstream visibility. These secretive forums serve as hubs for hackers, intelligence operatives, and whistleblowers, operating on encrypted servers that are constantly shifting to evade detection. Hacker groups communicate through hidden forums that are not indexed by any search engine, sharing everything from advanced hacking techniques to stolen data and zero-day vulnerabilities. Some of these networks operate on the dark web, but others exist within highly encrypted private networks that are nearly impossible to infiltrate. Unlike mainstream forums, which require login credentials, these underground communities often require personal invitations and verification from trusted members, ensuring that outsiders cannot simply stumble upon them. Spy networks also operate in highly classified digital environments, where intelligence agencies conduct covert operations, data exchanges, and counter-surveillance programs. These networks are used to coordinate espionage missions, infiltrate foreign governments, and monitor global cyber threats. Unlike conventional intelligence gathering, which relies on human sources, these digital spy networks function as a shadow internet where governments wage cyber warfare against each other. Encrypted whistleblower platforms, such as Secure Drop and Global Leaks, allow journalists, activists, and insiders to anonymously leak classified information without exposing their identities. While some of these platforms exist on the public web, many operate in deeply hidden networks to prevent government tracking and retaliation. As governments increase surveillance efforts, these underground whistleblower hubs have become critical tools for exposing corruption, war crimes, and human rights abuses. Case study: WikiLeaks and the hidden war against information transparency. One of the most famous cases of an underground network disrupting government secrecy is WikiLeaks, the controversial whistleblower platform that has exposed some of the most sensitive classified documents in modern history. Founded by Julian Assange, WikiLeaks became infamous for publishing leaked military reports, diplomatic cables, and government secrets that were never meant to be made public. Some of its most significant leaks included the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs, which detailed previously undisclosed civilian casualties and covert military operations. The platform also released diplomatic cables that exposed the inner workings of global politics, revealing everything from covert government deals to espionage programs targeting foreign leaders. Governments reacted swiftly, labeling WikiLeaks a national security threat and launching aggressive efforts to shut down its operations. Intelligence agencies monitored its servers, disrupted its funding, and pressured allied countries to block access to its content. Assange himself became a high-profile target, ultimately leading to his years-long asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy and subsequent arrest. Despite these efforts, WikiLeaks demonstrated that digital transparency can challenge the most powerful institutions in the world. The organization's work proved that hidden networks exist not just to keep secrets, but also to expose them, creating an ongoing battle between those who seek to control information and those who fight to reveal the truth. The war between government secrecy and digital freedom continues today, as new encrypted platforms, underground networks, and whistleblower sites emerge to counteract government censorship. The deeper one looks, the more evident it becomes that the internet is no longer just a tool for information sharing, it is a battleground for control, power, and secrecy. As governments tighten their grip on digital spaces, a new wave of alternative internet networks is rising. In the next section, we'll explore the future of decentralized internets, blockchain-based communications, and censorship-resistant digital spaces that could redefine the internet as we know it. The rise of alternative internet. The internet as we know it is increasingly becoming a battleground for control, censorship, and surveillance. Governments regulate access, corporations shape online visibility, and intelligence agencies monitor every digital footprint. But as restrictions tighten, new alternative internets are emerging, built not on centralized servers controlled by tech giants or state-run networks but on decentralized, community-driven technologies designed to bypass censorship and surveillance. These alternative internets are redefining digital communication, creating online spaces that exist beyond the reach of governments and traditional internet service providers. Mesh networks, the decentralized internet replacing traditional infrastructure. One of the most powerful alternatives to traditional internet infrastructure is the mesh network, a decentralized system that allows devices to connect directly to each other without relying on centralized ISPs or government-controlled networks. Unlike the traditional internet, which depends on massive data centers, fiber optic cables, and corporate-controlled service providers, mesh networks operate on localized, peer-to-peer connections, allowing users to create independent networks that function even when traditional internet services are blocked. These networks work by using wireless nodes, which act as relay points that pass data between users in a distributed manner. Each node connects to others, forming a self-sustaining web of connectivity. If one node is taken offline, the network simply reroutes data through alternate pathways, making it incredibly resilient to censorship and shutdowns. This is why mesh networks have become a critical tool in protest movements, disaster recovery efforts, and areas where governments frequently restrict internet access. In countries like Iran, China, and Cuba, activists and dissidents have relied on mesh networks to share information and coordinate protests when traditional communication channels were blocked. During the Hong Kong pro-democracy protests, thousands of demonstrators used FireChat, a mesh-based messaging app that allowed them to communicate without Wi-Fi or cellular data. In Cuba, where internet access is heavily restricted, citizens have developed El Paquete Semanal, an offline mesh network that distributes news, movies, and music via USB drives and hard disks. These grassroots networks are proving that internet connectivity doesn't have to be controlled by governments or corporations. Instead, communities can build independent, decentralized networks that function without permission from any centralized authority. Blockchain-based internet, the future of censorship-resistant network. While mesh networks create local connectivity alternatives, blockchain technology is building an entirely new version of the internet that is decentralized, censorship-resistant, and immune to corporate and government control. Traditional websites rely on centralized domain name systems, DNS, which can be blocked, censored, or manipulated by governments and corporations. Blockchain-based internet projects are removing these centralized points of failure, ensuring that online content remains accessible no matter how hard authorities try to suppress it. One of the most promising blockchain internet projects is Handshake, a decentralized domain name system that operates outside of ICANN, the organization that governs traditional domain names like .com, .org, and .net. Instead of relying on centralized servers, Handshake allows users to register and manage domains on a decentralized blockchain, meaning that no single entity can shut down or seize a website. This technology makes it impossible for governments to blacklist specific domains or manipulate search results, restoring true internet freedom to those who need it most. Another blockchain-based internet project, Holocon, takes decentralization even further by allowing users to host their own apps, data, and content without relying on cloud servers or corporate platforms. Instead of storing data in massive data centers controlled by Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, Holocon users contribute their own processing power to create a fully distributed network. This means that no government or corporation can erase content, censor information, or control access to digital resources, as every participant owns a piece of the network. These blockchain-based internets are paving the way for a future where censorship and government interference are no longer threats, allowing individuals to freely communicate, publish, and share information without relying on permission from centralized gatekeepers. Satellite-based internet, who controls the skies? While mesh networks and blockchain-based internets are developing alternatives on the ground, another battle for control is taking place in space. Satellite-based internet is emerging as a critical force in the fight for online access, offering a way to bypass traditional infrastructure entirely. Unlike fiber optic cables or wireless towers, satellite networks beam internet directly to users, making it impossible for governments to block access at a national level. One of the most well-known satellite internet projects is SpaceX's Starlink, a network of thousands of low Earth orbit satellites designed to provide global internet coverage, including remote areas with little to no connectivity. Starlink has already been used in conflict zones and disaster-stricken regions, providing internet access when traditional networks were either destroyed or deliberately shut down by authorities. But the rise of satellite internet raises new concerns about control and surveillance. While private companies like SpaceX claim to offer open, global connectivity, satellite-based internet can still be monitored, restricted, or weaponized by governments. Some nations have already started working on their own state-controlled satellite internet projects to counter Western-based networks. China is developing its own satellite constellation, a competitor to Starlink, designed to provide government-approved internet access while blocking foreign digital influences. Russia has also announced plans to build an independent satellite network to ensure that only state-controlled content reaches users. These developments highlight a growing space-based internet war, where competing powers are racing to control digital access from orbit. Even in the private sector, concerns exist about corporate control over satellite internet. If companies like SpaceX dominate global internet infrastructure, they could hold immense power over information flow, pricing, and censorship policies. The question remains, who should control the internet of the future? Governments, corporations, or decentralized networks built by the people? Case study: how dissidents in censored countries use alternative internet technology. In some of the most heavily censored countries in the world, activists and dissidents have turned to alternative internet technologies to bypass government restrictions and communicate freely. In North Korea, where internet access is almost non-existent for ordinary citizens, defectors have smuggled in satellite phones and portable Wi-Fi devices to connect with the outside world. Many risk severe punishment or execution just to access independent news sources or send messages beyond government-controlled networks. In Iran, where authorities frequently shut down mobile internet during protests, demonstrators have relied on Bluetooth-based mesh messaging apps like Briar, which allow users to communicate without any internet connection at all. Protesters have also used VPN tunnels, blockchain-based communication tools, and encrypted peer-to-peer messaging platforms to share real-time updates, even when the government has cut off national internet access. In Myanmar, during the military coup, citizens turned to satellite-based internet connections and USB-based information sharing networks to keep the global community informed about human rights abuses. The government responded by seizing SIM cards, shutting down fiber optic infrastructure, and arresting those caught using alternative internet technologies, proving how powerful these tools can be in the hands of those seeking freedom. As governments expand their control over the internet, the rise of alternative internets is reshaping the digital landscape. Decentralized networks, blockchain-based systems, and satellite connectivity are challenging the traditional power structures that have dominated the online world for decades. But as history has shown, those in power will not relinquish control easily. The war for digital freedom is only beginning, and in the next section, we will explore how underground digital economies, encrypted marketplaces, and hidden financial systems are changing the way money flows through the hidden internet. Digital black markets, the dark economy. Governments fear the internet has transformed global commerce, making it easier than ever to buy and sell goods across borders. But beneath the surface of legal online marketplaces, a hidden digital economy has emerged, one that operates beyond government oversight, beyond regulations, and beyond traditional financial systems. This shadow economy exists in the darkest corners of the internet, where anonymity reigns, untraceable transactions flourish, and illicit goods are exchanged in ways that governments struggle to control. For decades, authorities have battled against these underground markets, shutting them down one by one, only to see them resurface stronger, smarter, and more difficult to track. The dark economy of the internet is not just about drugs or illegal goods. It's about power, financial independence, and a battle between those who seek control and those who want to operate outside the system. The evolution of the dark web marketplace. The first major dark web marketplace that gained mainstream attention was Silk Road, an anonymous online bazaar that functioned much like eBay or Amazon, but for illegal goods. Launched in 2011 by Ross Ulbricht, Silk Road allowed users to purchase everything from narcotics to fake IDs using Bitcoin, making transactions nearly impossible to track. The marketplace was built on Tor, an encrypted network that masked the location of users, ensuring that both buyers and sellers could operate outside traditional surveillance. Silk Road quickly became a massive operation, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions and attracting thousands of buyers and sellers from around the world. But its success also made it a target for law enforcement. In 2013, the FBI managed to track down Ulbricht, seizing Silk Road's servers and shutting down the marketplace. What happened next, however, proved that shutting down one dark web market doesn't eliminate the demand, it only pushes it elsewhere. After Silk Road collapsed, new marketplaces emerged almost immediately. Alphabay, Hansa Market, Dream Market, each one operated with stronger security, better encryption, and more decentralized systems to prevent law enforcement from infiltrating them. Alphabay quickly became the largest darknet market ever, surpassing Silk Road in both scale and transactions. It wasn't just a marketplace for drugs, it became a hub for stolen data, counterfeit currency, hacking tools, and digital black market services. The FBI eventually shut down Alphabay in 2017, but just like before, new platforms took its place. Today, dark web markets continue to evolve, integrating decentralized hosting, multi-signature escrow systems, and encrypted communication channels to evade government interference. Authorities have struggled to keep up, as each shutdown only results in smarter, more resilient underground economies. Cryptocurrency and anonymity, the fear of untraceable transactions. The rise of the dark web economy would not have been possible without cryptocurrency, the revolutionary technology that allows for pseudonymous financial transactions without banks, governments, or intermediaries. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency to power darknet markets, providing users with a way to send and receive money without revealing their real-world identities. While Bitcoin was initially seen as an untraceable digital currency, governments and law enforcement agencies quickly developed tools to track Bitcoin transactions using blockchain analysis. Because Bitcoin's ledger is public, transactions can still be linked back to real-world identities if proper precautions aren't taken. To counteract this, newer cryptocurrencies have emerged that prioritize total anonymity. Monero, for example, is a privacy-focused cryptocurrency that uses advanced cryptographic techniques to completely obfuscate transaction details, making it virtually impossible to track. Unlike Bitcoin, Monero transactions do not leave a visible transaction history, making it the preferred currency for those who want absolute financial secrecy. Governments fear untraceable digital currency because it removes their ability to monitor and control financial transactions. If people can exchange money without oversight, taxation, or regulation, it weakens financial institutions, central banks, and law enforcement agencies that rely on financial surveillance to maintain control. This is why many governments have cracked down on cryptocurrency exchanges, forcing them to comply with identity verification laws, freezing accounts linked to darknet transactions, and attempting to regulate blockchain technology. But as history has shown, for every attempt to restrict financial freedom, new technologies emerge to restore it. Weapon sales, hacking tools, and espionage markets dark web marketplaces don't just facilitate drug sales and identity fraud. They have also become hubs for illegal weapons, hacking services, and cyber espionage tools. This is the part of the dark economy that worries governments the most, because it directly threatens national security, corporate infrastructure, and digital stability. Dark web vendors sell everything from firearms and explosives to stolen military equipment and assassination services. While some listings may be scams, intelligence agencies have confirmed that real transactions involving weapons, stolen government documents, and espionage tools take place on these underground markets. Cybercrime services have also exploded in popularity, offering ransomware kits, botnet rentals, and hacking tools that allow criminals to target corporations, governments, and even private citizens. Some of these underground cyber markets even offer malware as a service, where buyers can purchase custom-built hacking tools without needing any technical expertise. Beyond cybercrime, espionage markets have emerged where state-backed hackers sell classified intelligence, stolen government data, and surveillance tools to the highest bidder. Intelligence agencies, corporations, and even rogue governments are actively involved in buying and selling sensitive information, proving that the dark economy isn't just run by criminals. It is used by world powers in the shadows. Governments fear these underground markets not just because of what is being sold, but because they represent a failure to control the flow of information, money, and power in the digital age. Case study: how the CIA and FBI infiltrated dark web markets. Despite the secrecy of dark web markets, government agencies have successfully infiltrated and dismantled several of them. One of the most famous cases of this was the joint operation between the CIA, FBI, and Europol to take down Alpha Bay and Hansa Market in 2017. Law enforcement agencies had spent years trying to infiltrate darknet markets, but they faced a major challenge. How do you take down a platform that exists on encrypted, decentralized networks with no central authority? The FBI's strategy was to track Alpha Bay's administrators by exploiting small operational mistakes. While the marketplace itself was anonymous, its creator, Alexandre Casas, had made one fatal error. He had used his real email address on an old forum post linked to Alpha Bay's development. This small detail allowed authorities to trace him back to his physical location in Thailand, where he was arrested. But what made this takedown even more remarkable was what happened next. Instead of shutting down Hansa Market, the second largest dark web market at the time, law enforcement secretly took it over and ran it themselves for an entire month. During that time, Hansa continued to operate normally, but the entire marketplace was under the control of law enforcement. The FBI and Europol collected user data, transaction records, and IP addresses, building a massive database of darknet market participants before finally shutting it down. This operation marked one of the most successful infiltrations of the dark web economy and sent shockwaves through underground digital marketplaces. But as history has shown, dark web markets always find a way to return, evolving with stronger encryption, decentralized hosting, and improved anonymity measures. The battle between law enforcement and digital black markets is a never-ending war, one that raises deeper questions about control, privacy, and the future of online commerce. As underground economies grow stronger, the risks of accessing these markets also increase. In the next section, we'll explore the hidden dangers of navigating the secret internet, from government tracking and honey traps to malware and cybercriminals waiting for their next victim. The dangers of accessing the hidden internet. The idea of an underground, hidden internet is alluring. It promises anonymity, uncensored information, and digital freedom beyond government control. But behind this promise lies a web of dangers that can easily trap the unsuspecting. For every journalist seeking a secure platform, there's a hacker waiting to steal sensitive data. For every whistleblower using encrypted communication, there's an intelligence agency monitoring their every move. The hidden internet is not just a place of secrecy, it's a battleground where hackers, criminals, law enforcement, and intelligence agencies constantly clash. Those who enter without understanding the risks often find themselves tracked, hacked, or worse, legally compromised. Government tracking and honey traps, how intelligence agencies catch users. Many people assume that using Tor, VPNs, or encrypted networks makes them invisible to governments. But intelligence agencies have spent years developing sophisticated tracking tools to infiltrate and de-anonymize users on the dark web. One of the most effective tactics used by law enforcement is the honey trap, a fake marketplace, forum, or service set up to attract criminals and unsuspecting users. Governments run these sites for months, collecting user information before suddenly shutting them down and arresting those involved. The most famous example of this strategy was the FBI's takeover of Hansa Market. Instead of shutting it down immediately, the FBI secretly ran the marketplace, recording every transaction, private message, and user login before finally pulling the plug. This operation led to thousands of arrests worldwide, proving that even the most secure darknet markets could be compromised. Law enforcement agencies also use network infiltration tactics, such as planting malware on darknet servers or inserting spy nodes into Tor's routing system. These spy nodes collect metadata, user activity, and IP leaks, gradually unmasking those who believe they are protected by anonymity. Even experienced users who take every precaution can still be caught if they interact with a compromised service. Governments have also developed powerful de-anonymization tools, including artificial intelligence-based tracking algorithms that analyze browsing patterns, even in encrypted environments. Some intelligence agencies run thousands of Tor exit nodes, meaning that when users believe they are securely exiting the dark web, their traffic is actually being monitored and logged by the very governments they are trying to avoid. Malware, scams, and hacking risks. Why browsing hidden networks is risky. Aside from government surveillance, one of the biggest dangers of accessing the hidden internet is the sheer volume of malware, scams, and cybercriminals waiting to exploit inexperienced users. Unlike the surface web, where search engines filter out most malicious sites, the hidden internet has no centralized security control, meaning that threats are everywhere. One of the most common dangers is ransomware, where users unknowingly download infected files that encrypt all their personal data. The attacker then demands a cryptocurrency payment in exchange for the decryption key, often leaving victims with no choice but to pay or lose their files forever. Phishing scams are also rampant on the dark web. Fake darknet markets, forums, and email services are constantly set up to look identical to real ones, tricking users into entering their login credentials. Once stolen, these credentials can be used to impersonate users, steal cryptocurrency wallets, or even lead to real-world arrests. Some of the most dangerous malware attacks originate from the dark web, including keyloggers, trojans, and backdoor exploits that silently infect devices, allowing hackers to remotely control a victim's computer. Even accessing a compromised site can be enough to get hacked, as certain exploits automatically install malware without the user clicking on anything. Hackers on the dark web also sell and trade stolen personal data, including bank account information, passwords, and government IDs. Many of these leaks originate from users who unknowingly visit compromised services that secretly extract login credentials. A single careless mistake, visiting the wrong site, clicking the wrong link, or trusting the wrong vendor, can lead to full identity theft, financial loss, or government surveillance. Ethical and legal risks. What you need to know before exploring the hidden web. Many people assume that simply accessing the dark web is legal, but in some countries, even using Tor or a VPN is enough to get flagged by intelligence agencies. Governments have passed laws that allow for mass surveillance on individuals who attempt to access hidden networks, claiming that anyone who does so must be involved in illegal activity. Even in countries where using the dark web is legal, accidentally accessing the wrong content can have serious consequences. Many darknet forums contain illegal material, including child exploitation, human trafficking, and violent extremist content. Law enforcement agencies actively monitor these spaces, and even clicking on an illegal link can leave a digital footprint that leads to prosecution. One of the biggest legal risks comes from entrapment operations, where law enforcement poses as buyers or sellers on the dark web to lure individuals into illegal transactions. There have been cases where individuals purchased what they believed to be harmless items, only to be arrested because the vendor was actually an undercover officer. The ethical concerns surrounding the hidden internet are just as complex. While it provides a haven for free speech, privacy, and activism, it also hosts some of the darkest and most disturbing corners of human behavior. Some argue that the very existence of the dark web enables crime, while others insist that the ability to communicate without fear of government retaliation is a fundamental right. For those who believe they can navigate these risks without consequences, history has shown that many have underestimated the hidden dangers lurking within the dark web. Case study: FBI's takedown of the Playpen child exploitation network. One of the most shocking and controversial cases of dark web law enforcement involved the FBI's takeover of Playpen, a massive child exploitation website operating on Tor. Instead of shutting it down immediately, the FBI seized control of the site and continued running it for weeks, secretly deploying malware that identified thousands of users worldwide. This operation, known as Operation Pacifier, was highly controversial because it raised legal and ethical concerns about whether law enforcement should be allowed to distribute illegal content in order to catch criminals. Critics argued that the FBI's actions blurred the lines between law enforcement and criminal activity, as they allowed thousands of images to be shared under their control. Despite the controversy, the operation led to hundreds of arrests across multiple countries, proving how effective law enforcement can be in tracking and infiltrating hidden networks. However, the case also sparked debates about the legality of government hacking, privacy rights, and the potential dangers of allowing intelligence agencies to operate within the same spaces they claim to be shutting down. The takedown of Playpen sent a strong message that no part of the internet is truly beyond government reach. Even those who believe they are operating under layers of encryption can still be tracked, monitored, and exposed if law enforcement has the right tools and authority. The dark web is not a lawless place. It is heavily monitored, filled with hidden traps, and fraught with ethical and legal risks that most users fail to anticipate. While it offers anonymity, it also exposes individuals to government surveillance, hacking threats, and legal consequences that can follow them for years. As the war between internet freedom and digital control intensifies, governments are developing new ways to regulate, track, and restrict access to the hidden internet. But at the same time, a new generation of activists, technologists, and privacy advocates are working to create censorship-resistant, decentralized digital space.